Brian Lehrer on WNYC. We talked recently on the show last week about the dangers to pedestrians from the way people use e-bikes. Now we'll talk about the danger to e-bike riders and everyone else from cars. 3 e-bike riders were killed in just 1 week this month in New York City by hit-and-run drivers. So what can be done to keep everyone safe? All 3 of the recent victims were working people commuting to or from work. Last Tuesday, Paulina Tech Chalk, an e-bike delivery worker, was hit from behind by a pickup truck in Cypress Hills, run over, and left in the street. That same day, 51-year-old Angelo Camara, a father of 5, riding home from work, was killed in Hunts Point by a driver who ran a red light. And on Thursday, 40-year-old Mamadou Diallo, not the old famous victim, Mamadou Diallo, a new one, a delivery worker, was struck head-on in Flatlands by a driver who then fled the scene. So far, no arrests have been made in any of these cases last we saw. It's all part of a troubling pattern this year. Preliminary data from the city shows that 18 cyclists have died on New York City streets so far this year. 18, most of them on e-bikes. In response, the street safety advocacy group Transportation Alternatives is planning a protest outside City Hall today. They call it a die-in for around 5:30. One of their demands is that the city move faster on Vision Zero. Remember that de Blasio-era initiative meant to get New York to 0 traffic deaths? My guest helped design that initiative from inside City Hall at the time, and he now runs the organization, pushing to hold the city to it. He is Ben Furnas, Executive Director these days of Transportation Alternatives, who joins me now. Ben, thanks for coming on. Sorry it's under these circumstances, obviously. Welcome back to WNYC.
Good morning, Brian. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And listeners, as always, you're welcome in on this topic. Today, especially if you ride an e-bike or any kind of bike in New York City, what's the state of your commute? Have you had close calls or worse? Do you avoid certain streets or intersections or types of intersections? We'll get to categories because you know they're dangerous. 212-433. WNYC call or text 212-433-9692. Maybe especially if you have to ride a bike for work, bike messengers, deliveristas, or anybody with a question for Ben Furnas from Transportation Alternatives, 212-433. WNYC, call or text. Ben, I want to first make this about the people, not just the numbers. You put out a statement in response to the deaths of those 3 New Yorkers who fell victim to hit and runs last week. You said 3 hardworking New Yorkers are dead and 3 families are heartbroken. What can you tell us, a little bit anyway, about who Paulina Tech Chalk or Angelo Camara or Mamadou Diallo were?
Thanks, Brian. This is particularly heartbreaking because all 3 of these cyclists were people who were doing everything right. They were headed home or working on the streets of New York City, and now their lives have been taken. It's truly tragic and awful. Angelo was a father of 5 and a beloved member of his community. Paulina Tech Chalk was on her way to work when she was hit from behind. Mamadou Diallo himself was an active delivery worker. One of the most dangerous jobs in New York City is still making food deliveries, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking knowing that these 3 New Yorkers didn't make it home at the end of the day, and their families will never be able to kiss at midnight or see their dad or sister or friend again.
So it's not new, obviously, that there are traffic fatalities in New York City, but according to your organization, bike fatalities are up 70% over this time last year. Is there something in particular behind the sudden steep increase?
I think it's important for us to keep these things in perspective. There's come a long way. There's a lot more cyclists on the streets than ever before. This is a good thing. A lot more New Yorkers are using a bike to get around. But with that growth in the popularity of bicycling comes a responsibility for the city to be building out a high-quality network of protected bike lanes, slowing vehicle speeds to make sure that pedestrians and cyclists are safe, and really a whole-of-government approach to making sure that folks are safe no matter how they're getting around New York.
Right. Well, many of the cyclists who died on the roads this year were riding e-bikes rather than traditional bikes. What's distinct, if anything, about how, where, and to whom e-bike deaths are happening? Like, is the fact that they can go faster than regular bikes increasing the risk if they're hit by a car?
One thing I would say is e-bikes, particularly low speed and pedal assist bikes, are enormously popular for all sorts of New Yorkers, right? People use e-bikes to obviously perform vital delivery work. But more and more, we're seeing families who are using a pedal assist e-bike to bring their kids around in a cargo bike. We're seeing commuters who maybe use an e-bike to get over the bridges. And, we're seeing a growth in e-bikes, even as we're seeing a growth in more conventional acoustic pedal bikes.
Hit and run.
Yeah.
Common thread, certainly in these deaths, drivers fleeing the scene. Outrageous, egregious, no matter what your street safety politics are. Is that increasing, or is anything about that pattern revealing about who's behind the wheel in these crashes, or traffic enforcement, or anything else?
I think it's really important for there to be continued efforts to track down and bring some level of consequence to drivers who flee the scene after a crash. But the truth is, even finding these folks is not going to bring back the people who lost their loved ones, which is why we really focus on building out high quality infrastructure to make sure that bicyclists can be separated from pedestrians and cyclists, and make sure or pedestrians and vehicles, to make sure that they're safe before these types of crashes ever occur. And a common thread through all of this is making sure we have high quality infrastructure, slow and calm vehicle speeds, and a level of thoughtful accountability to make sure that everyone's following the rules of the road.
You helped build Vision Zero from inside City Hall over a decade ago under Mayor de Blasio, as I mentioned in the intro. Vision Zero, for those who weren't here or don't remember, is a vision of zero traffic deaths. It did come down during the de Blasio administration to some degree, but it's still in the hundreds per year. Looking at this year's numbers, what part of the strategy is held up and what part has clearly broken down, if you can break it up that way?
Yeah, I think it's critically important to continue the efforts to bring traffic fatalities down. If we look around the world, other major global cities have traffic fatalities per capita that are substantially lower than ours. Paris and London and Montreal, Bogota, Tokyo. These are major peer cities that we should be looking towards for inspiration. And a common thread for all of them is, concerted mayoral leadership to transform the streetscape, to make it so much more safe and pleasant and delightful for people who are walking and people who are bicycling, and to slow the speeds of vehicles. We are pushing to reduce the speed limits to 20 miles per hour on neighborhood streets. This is a technique that was used very successfully all across London, and has really driven down pedestrian and cyclist fatalities in London. And we think that's something that the mayor has an opportunity to do here. Continue to accelerate the street redesigns that have been successful when they're implemented, to have a high quality network of protected bike infrastructure, and to slow down vehicles to make sure that people are safe when they're trying to walk or bike around. At its best, Vision Zero is something that reduces people's risk of death or injury when they're walking around and when they're bicycling, and no matter how they are getting around, even in cars themselves.
Is there a flow from mayor to mayor on this? Obviously, Vision Zero was created under Mayor de Blasio. You were there at the origin. Did Mayor Adams follow it up, fail to follow it up? Is Mamdani taking it seriously? How would you describe the mayoral arc, given your role in the creation of de Blasio Vision Zero?
Yeah, I think there was a real clarion goal set that no level of death and serious injury on our streets was acceptable, and there was sort of a spirit of continual improvement. Of every time we saw harrowing traffic fatalities in a particular area, we looked at all the tools that local government had in order to reduce traffic fatalities among that category, to sort of always be pushing city government to do better, to bring all the tools available to the table, and continue to save lives of New Yorkers. There's sort of a sense in which sometimes traffic crashes are seen as just an inevitable part of living in the modern age. And we just genuinely believe that that's not true, that there's a lot of things that the city government can be doing and could be doing more to prevent crashes before they happen and to save lives. Now, I think the Adams administration, it started off okay. There was a lot of continuity, but I think we saw a lot of political interference of particular street safety redesigns. McGinnis Boulevard probably being the most famous, but it occurred all across the city. And we've seen very hearteningly that the Mamdani administration has moved forward with projects that were either watered down or put on ice to put safety first. And now we think there's a huge opportunity for the Mamdani administration, for Mike Flynn, the commissioner of DOT, to set forth sort of a comprehensive vision, bringing all the tools of the city government together.
I want to ask you in a minute who you think the opponents of substantial Vision Zero implementation are, because you just mentioned some opponents during the Adams years, in theory. But you know what? As our listeners are probably noticing, your phone line has been deteriorating as we go. So we're going to put you on hold here, and my producer's going to get on with you, and we're going to fix the audio issue. And what we'll do, folks, while we're getting Ben Furnas, Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives, reconnected, is I'm going to go through some of the calls that have come in. All our lines are full. And listeners, I think you're going to notice a pattern here. Paul in Brooklyn, you're on WNYC. Hi, Paul.
Good morning, Brian, and thank you to Mr. Furnas, who I know very well. The work that Transportation Alternatives has been doing over the course of time is very important for our city. One of the very real challenges is that the various stakeholders tend to talk at each other rather than listen to each other. What I believe is that we need some common language for all of the stakeholders to be able to discuss the issues about our literal common ground. I think that one of the challenges is that, as an example, if you're asking New Yorkers to slow down, that's really hard to sell for people that are trying to get wherever it is that they're trying to get to as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, and as cheaply as possible. We tend to, meaning whether it's a pedestrian, whether it's a driver, whether it's a rider, everybody wants to get where they want to go as soon as possible without hassle. And we tend to believe that whatever we are doing, our current mode of transportation, whether we are walking, riding, or driving, is the one that everybody else should defer to.
Right. And I understand, and I'm going to leave it there, Paul. And I'm going to admit, folks, he did not actually go to the point that I thought that he was going to, but all the other 9 lines on our board are making basically this point. I'm going to get a couple of those people on. Barrington in East New York, you're on WNYC. Hello, Barrington.
I'm trying to find out down there.
All right, we'll come back to Barrington. How about Casey in Queens? You're on WNYC. Hi, Casey.
Good morning. How you doing? Thanks for letting me on. I've been an avid cyclist for almost 50 years, and I've commuted in and out of the city multiple times, done like 7,000 to 8,000 miles a year on a bicycle. When I was a kid, I found a Puch motorcycle, which is about 50 cc's or 150 cc's. And, as a kid, you wanted to ride a motorized vehicle. I later found out the Department of Motor Vehicles required that the moped, which doesn't go that fast, it goes 30, 35 max, required to have license, insurance, and registration. Now, these e-bikes are going 30 miles an hour and such, and they are not licensed, they're not insured, nor are they registered, and these riders are riding with their own rules.
So you want them to come under the same rules as the mopeds because of the speeds they can go. I hear you. So we're starting to hear the point and the pattern, listeners. Richard in the Bronx, you're on WNYC. Hi, Richard.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah, great. I want to just say that I agree with the first 2 callers pretty much. Also, as a long time 35-year commuter from the Bronx, to work 5 days a week, winter, spring, you name it. And I saw there were more and more bicycles getting on the pathways and whatever on the roads. I'm sure if you kind of measured the amount of bicyclists back, 35 years ago to now, it just like, I have no idea what the increase is, but, it's huge. I think the main thing that transportation alternatives, if and I had been a member of them back in the day, the main thing I think they should really focus on is the danger to bicyclists. That's the number one thing. You could plan all these bicycle lanes and I don't know how you get around intersections in New York City. I don't know if there's any way to do that. So there's always going to be a severe, in my opinion, a very high risk.
Right, but you wanted to make a point about e-bikes also. I think you told our screener in particular.
Well, e-bikes just make it worse. I mean, I see these, especially these messengers. They ride with their legs on one side. I don't know. It's becoming very common, and and they obviously give up some control with that. And on top of it, they have their phones that they're looking at. So I mean. I don't want to say I don't feel bad for them if they have an accident, but if they're not aware of the danger, then it's really a shame, because that's the only way that's going to cut back on these accidents. And I'm just curious if the TA guy knows the statistics on the accidents, because even a minor accident, you could be alive for the rest, for 50 more years. But I think you've had, Brian, shows where you have even a friend that got, she was a pedestrian or something.
Correct.
And
I'm just talking, life's been changed
and I'm talking about bicyclists, not pedestrians. How many accidents that the person lived? But I mean, if you get hit by a 3,000 pound car traveling even 2 or 3 miles per hour, forget about 10 or 15 or 20. Yeah. There's obviously going to be some severe problems that person's going to live with.
Richard, thank you very much. So I think we have Ben Furnas, Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives, back on a better line now. Yep. Ben, you there?
Yep, I'm here, Brian. Hi.
And all of those callers, nobody was very succinct, so it wasn't as clear a bang, bang, bang point as I thought I was going to make. But here's the point, Ben. We have 10 lines. They're all full with people who called in instantly as soon as I opened the phones on this. You're here. We invited you because of the news in the last week. The 3 e-bike riders were killed by hit-and-run car drivers. But all 10 of our lines are people calling to say, oh, my God, these e-bikes, they're such a hazard. I'm sure you're hearing that at Transportation Alternatives. Does it make it politically more difficult for you to, to do what you're trying to do with respect to regulating and enforcing on car drivers? And B, even though you're a bicycle advocacy group, do you hear them?
Absolutely. We have seen an enormous growth in the types of devices that folks are using to get around in New York, and something that we're really seeing. And, I took the 30 mile per hour point to heart. There are high-speed devices that are actually currently illegal, that are out on the streets, devices capable of exceeding 25 miles per hour, going up to 30, 40, a terrible crash on the Queensboro Bridge where a scooter capable of going 50 miles per hour. We at Transportation Alternatives actually believe that those devices aren't really appropriate for the road, and definitely not for our bike lanes. And that's why we support the actions taken by the Mamdani administration to crack down on these high-speed illegal devices on our streets. And in fact, we think that Class 3 e-bikes, so e-bikes that are capable of exceeding 20 miles per hour, going up to 25, 28 miles per hour, that are currently legal, we actually support a bill in the City Council sponsored by Councilmember Hudson to phase out those devices on our streets, so to end the sale of those Class 3 e-bikes, to make sure that if something is being treated like a bicycle, that it's moving at a slow and reasonable speed. My daughter, she's 6 years old. She loves to ride her bike. and I love to ride my bike with her. And I, we'll oftentimes she'll bike on the sidewalk and I'll bike in the street. But if we're in a bike lane together, I get nervous when there's high-speed devices that are really capable of exceeding a reasonable bicycle level speed. And so we think it makes sense to phase out those types of devices for use in our bike lanes. That being said, though, the number one risk to both bicyclists and pedestrians continues to be high-speed vehicles, as these crashes over this past week really horrifically illustrate. Which is why we really want a comprehensive approach. We want to keep our bike lanes and push for our bike lanes to be much, much safer for all types of bicyclists, and we want to make sure that our travel lanes, our streets, are safe from deadly speeding vehicles, protecting our pedestrians no matter where they're walking, and protecting our cyclists no matter what type of cyclists we are from those dangerous devices.
We are on the New York side talking about street safety after 3 e-bike riders, commuters were hit and killed by hit-and-run drivers in the last week, and we're using that as a hook for our latest conversation about street safety overall in New York City with Ben Furnas from Transportation Alternatives. Ben, I want to read from an article in the West Side Spirit recently about a protest, and they were protesting you. It says they wanted stricter regulation of e-bikes and other micromobility devices, including registration requirements, licensing, and mandatory helmet laws. Policies Transportation Alternatives argues would not improve safety, and it refers to a crowd of roughly 50 protesters, many dressed in their group's signature purple from a group called NYC E-Vehicle Safety Alliance, and they had signs reading TransAlt, Transportation Alternatives, TransAlt has blood on their hands. Hey TA, your streets aren't for elderly or disabled people, and e-vehicles kill too. And it says some protesters questioned Transportation Alternatives' corporate sponsors and accused the organization of prioritizing business interests over public safety. You want to respond to that protest? I'm sure you know about it.
Sure, of course, yeah. So, Transportation Alternatives, we are a safety organization for bicyclists. We are a safety organization for pedestrians, and we're a street safety organization that really looks to reimagine the streets of New York City, so it's much more pleasant and delightful for people who love New York. We've taken a position that it really makes sense to phase out the fastest devices on our streets to protect New Yorkers from cars. But it's true that we think that anything that would restrict people's ability to get families' ability, commuters' ability to gain access to low-speed pedal assist e-bikes is something that doesn't make a lot of sense. New Jersey is a very cautionary tale here. They move forward with a pretty extensive bicycle licensing regime for all types of e-mobility devices, and it's been a big mess. Families and others have been unable to get the devices that they're looking to help them commute, to help bring their friend, their family to school and to work. We are a safety organization that follows the data first, and that's what we put at the forefront of everything we do. I take it really seriously that people feel like e-bikes and bicyclists are creating a level of shagginess on the streets, but we really have to keep clear that our first priority is safety for pedestrians and for cyclists, and that's what we keep at the forefront by following the data.
Let me take one of the calls that's sitting on the board in the category that I took while we were reconnecting your line, and let you interact with them directly. How about Santiago in Brooklyn? You're on WNYC. Hi, Santiago.
Hey, Santiago. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me on. So I ride an e-bike. I agree illegal motos are dangerous, but I really disagree with the focus that I think has been going on generally recently about these e-bikes are the reason for this risk. I mean, these three poor people who lost their lives, and by the way, I think all of them are a tragedy, I would say, maybe in disagreement with one of the other callers, they were killed by dangerous drivers, which is caused by all these conditions on the road, the design, it's so tragic and shameful that this is what politicians in this city, the Speaker of the City Council included, are focused on. I mean, these are so many people out here tragically losing their lives and being injured. And the only answer she has is, we're going to do all these bills about e-bikes.
Santiago, so of course, I'm glad to see that there's one call on the line that's supportive of transportation alternatives position. But my screener had said that you said you think e-bikes should be banned. So I don't know if you were trying to sneak your way in because you thought we wouldn't take your call. But did you not tell them that you're a normal biker, quote, normal biker, and afraid of e-bikes?
I'm afraid of e-motos, Brian. I ride a pedal assist e-bike that helps me get over the bridges. That's why I use it. But there are people who drive some of the devices like Mr. Furnas mentioned, these illegal e-scooters that can go 50 miles an hour. They're dangerous. They're already illegal. They should be banned. They should be seized. We should do something about that. But they're not. When I get off the Williamsburg Bridge at Delancey and Essex, I'm not afraid that I'm going to get hit by a scooter. I'm afraid by the people who are driving like absolute nut jobs every single day, 24/7 there, who are going to kill me. And I think most other cyclists are feeling the same. The e-bikes are scary and illegal e-motos are scary, but they're not the biggest risks out there. The stats prove it, and I think just the vibes prove it. I'm not afraid of someone on one of those in the same way I'm afraid of like a semi-truck.
Santiago, thank you very much. And here's a text in the interest of fairness that's more supportive of you. It says the focus needs to be on making commutes cheaper, more accessible, and more environmentally sustainable. That means e-bikes are simply better than traditional bikes. To privilege bicyclists over e-bike riders is to set back progress on urban transit. So react to any of that. We're going to be out of time soon.
Yeah, sure. No, I really appreciate both of these comments. I think at their best, low-speed and pedal-assist e-bikes are an incredibly freedom-expanding option for a lot of New Yorkers. And we really want to encourage people to be hopping on a bike to get around, hopping on a low-speed or pedal-assist e-bike to get around. These are great ways, and they're much safer than cars and trucks. And at their best, they can really be a source of urban vitality and safety for everyone on the streets. Now, do I think that everyone should be following the rules of the road? Absolutely. But I also think that people who are driving extremely heavy and extremely fast vehicles have a particular responsibility to be driving modest speeds, following the rules, and making sure that everybody, whether you're walking or biking, is safe out there.
Mayor Mamdani's office made a bit of news recently by announcing that he had finally bought a bike helmet. He likes to show people that he rides, but he's been riding without a helmet. Is that something you want to react to?
Sure, yeah. It's never a bad idea to wear a helmet, but if we look at cities around the world, the world-class bicycle cities, places where people of all ages and abilities feel comfortable hopping on a bike to get around, the thing that distinguishes them is not that everyone is wearing a helmet. The thing that distinguishes them is they've got incredible street designs that keep pedestrians and bicyclists safe and protected. And that's the type of city that we're hoping Mayor Mamdani will embrace and build. And I think he has a real opportunity to. And I think, honestly, everybody who called in today would feel so much safer and happier if the streets reflected all the different types of users and helped everybody feel safe out there.
So to that point, we'll finish after I reference the protest that was against your group, the protest that your group, Transportation Alternatives, will be holding later today, a die-in, you call it, outside City Hall. What's the specific policy ask or set of asks, as briefly as you can, behind it that would significantly move the city toward that structural enhanced safety that you were just referring to?
Absolutely. So we're calling for a comprehensive plan from City Hall. We think the key components of this are safer and more humane vehicle speed, so an expansion of 20-mile-per-hour zones, an acceleration of a build-out of a high-quality bicycle network to keep pedestrians and cyclists safe, and bringing every tool in the toolbox across every agency to reduce dangerous driving and improve safety along corridors that are dangerous and at intersections which are particularly dangerous. So all of these things we think the city can do: safer vehicles, safer designs, and safer speeds, and that's what we're hoping to see from this administration.
I'll give you another 30, extend by 30 seconds to say one type of intersection design that you want to see in more places in the city.
Yeah, so something called hardened daylighting. So this improves visibility at the corners, but also slows the turns of cars. A huge problem, a huge source of danger is when cars are turning and interacting with pedestrians, and a treatment that shortens crossing distances, so pedestrians don't have to walk so far in the streets in order to cross the street, but also slows the turns of drivers and improves visibility at the corners. That's a great treatment, and we think it could be used in a whole lot more places.
There was a fatality of a pedestrian near me recently, and I noticed that the light cycle at that intersection changed immediately thereafter, so that there was more time when the pedestrians had a walk signal, but the cars, who could be going at the same time, still had a red light.
Yeah, that's a terrific treatment called a leading pedestrian interval to give pedestrians a head start to cross the street. That's a terrific treatment. I know the Department of Transportation uses that in a lot of places, but that's exactly the type of treatment that we think could be done in a whole lot more places, and as part of this comprehensive street safety ambition that we're looking to see out of City Hall.
Ben Furnas, Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.